Specifically. So what does it mean for us to embody the principles that we seek to uphold? How many of us have heard the phrases of do not become what it is that you're fighting against? Oftentimes you see folks who are fighting for justice, right? Demanding accountability. And then all of a sudden they themselves do not embody the very thing that they're fighting for. And it's frustrating, right? SubhanAllah, and it's really, really irritating. But one of the things that we understand as activists, as change makers, as agents of change is we're the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our mission is grounded in this understanding of who are we working for, right? And it kind of really grounds you when you have an understanding of who you are employed by. And I'm going to use the terminology we're used to because we live in a capitalistic society, right? And so we're used to this concept of we're working for someone and we do these actions and then we clock out at the end of the day and then we're done for the day. But subhanAllah, when you're activists, when you're change makers, when you're agents of change, you're on the clock 24/7. This means that those moments of ibadah that you are engaged in, even in forms of activism or even spiritual work that you're doing, whether it's prayer, Quran, du'as that you're reciting, getting to know your brothers and sisters, etc., any formal or informal acts of worship are meant to strengthen you. And we see that from the Quran, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Ya ayyuhal mudaththir qum fa'andhir. When he commanded him to go warn the people, the other surah that was revealed was Ya ayyuhal muzammil qum al-layla illa qalila, to stand all of the night, part of the night, most of the night, to be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what's the point of striving for a better world if we're not reflecting the very character of faith? That our standards are derived from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that character of faith that has brought so many people to Islam, that have shown people that it's not about my ego, it's not about the savior complex, it's not about me being that individual that the activism rotates around, to being that someone who is easily replaced in this work. I'm easily replaceable. Imam Tom is replaceable. Reem is replaceable. Each and every single one of you, no matter what position you hold, are replaceable, subhanAllah. And when we understand that we're a speck in the bigger scheme of things, and that we're supposed to be instruments or tools of change, not the change itself, right? Imagine you're driving on the freeway. There's so many cars. Each and every single person is headed towards a destination, right? You can change that car. You could be in a Volvo, you could be in a Toyota, you could be in a Honda. The vehicle changes. The destination does not. And so when we're talking about character and activism, you're rooted in something higher than yourself. You're rooted in something higher than what society demands of you. You're rooted in understanding that you are working for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ taught us that he was sent to perfect character. He was sent to perfect noble character. He was sent as a rahmatan lil alameen, as a mercy to mankind. People knew Islam by the character and the words and the interactions of the people before they even learned the aqidah. Before they could even see what the tenets of Islam were, how did they learn Islam? By the traders and their honesty, by the ways that you interact with one another, the way that you show up as a human being. And sometimes when we're active or engaged in activist work, and I would call it activism, but understand that that word in and of itself is very loaded, right? Because sometimes we see activism as just political activism, but I'm talking about any work that you're doing to better the humanity, whether it's a halaqah that you're leading, a youth group that you're doing, political activism, speaking to power. All of that right now is gonna encompass it under activism, and it's gonna be another topic to kind of define activism a little further. But I want us to understand, where do we derive this character from, subhanAllah? This statement of the Prophet ﷺ, this hadith that I'm translating, the English meaning, he was sent to perfect noble character. And so what does it mean for us to have a character that's rooted in Islam, rooted in the lessons that we learn from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? And for me, it came down to three things. These three things, even though there's many more that we can talk about, these three things really encompass the groundwork or the foundation of what it is that you need to be able to cultivate in order to make sure that your character reflects that of your faith and not of that of our weaknesses and our own humanity. And the first one is living with integrity. There was a saying that I learned when I was in college, that if you believe in something, but if you do not act on it, that's dishonesty. If you believe in something, but you do not act upon it, it's dishonesty. Dishonesty to yourself, dishonesty to your community, dishonesty in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know Islam is a light. You know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with this faith that not only transforms hearts, but transforms societies. And so, understanding that, how do we take this concept of integrity as a foundation of the work we do as activists? Think about it as kind of like the groundwork. It is an alignment of your words, your actions, and your intentions. That when you realize you're doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you get rid of that savior complex. That you're not a hero, you're not the one who's needed in this work. Earlier I said that you're easily replaceable, but with integrity, activism doesn't become something that's hollow, something that's empty, words that don't have meaning, words that don't have any grounding. Without integrity, activism does become hollow. Its fruits are short-lived. And then so when something comes to you and it dangles a position or money or any aspect of getting power, you're easily swept away by it, right? And so when you're someone of integrity, someone who's grounded in their principles, it goes back to the understanding of, again, who are you working for? And when you're clear on who you're working for, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you realize even, and I'll come to this in a little bit, the difficulty that arises when dealing with one another, especially those who are within the activist space or the Islamic workspace, you are able to go back to that foundation of grounding yourself. What is your mission? What is your vision? How do you embody what it means to be a Muslim who has noble character, and you hold yourself to a higher standard, which means that you're truthful even when it's challenging, even when it's inconvenient, that you're patient through those adversities, you're consistent even when it's challenging, and you're accountable, not just to others, but you're accountable to your own principles. That the way you hold others accountable, you're going to hold yourself to a higher degree of accountability. That if you expect the best from others, you expect even better from yourself as well. And so that you're not becoming someone who says that which you do not do, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us about in the Quran. And the subhanAllah is really thinking about how can I show up as someone who is like a palm tree, rooted deeply in their principles, that I'm not just unmoved by society and its trends and its ideologies, but also I'm unmoved by my nafs. And that cannot happen without the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why for activists, for our leaders in mass, we actually try to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Why? This means that subhanAllah, as we invite to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're in a position of leadership, if you are someone who is overseeing programs or other things, that subhanAllah, be that someone who wakes up the last third of the night to pray tahajjud. Be that person who's the first to come and the last to leave, subhanAllah. And I'm saying this as examples. But understand that we cannot advocate for the change that we seek unless we ourselves are willing to change with ourselves as well and to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Nowadays, especially when you look at social media, offline and online, you see this concept of activism became a form of validation, a form of seeking praise, a form of, trying to gain as much followers, because followers apparently means impact, right? And it becomes this kind of desensitized space where it's no longer about what it is that you're fighting for, what it is that you're working towards. But all of a sudden, it's centered around the ego. It's centered around the self. And this is what led to the rise of the whole celebrity shields, right? And the celebrity leaders. It's you're forgetting the cause. You're using the cause for something else, when the cause in and of itself was supposed to be the vehicle to lead towards the change that we're hoping to seek, the transformation that we're hoping to seek. People often think that I know we've heard this phrase that we're out-organized and all this other stuff. SubhanAllah, if you look at the number of Muslims in the United States, about 3.45%, I think that needs to be updated from 2017. We're definitely much more than that. The impact that we can have, the fact that the 2024 elections centered around Muslims living in the swing states shows you the power that we continue to deny ourselves. Why? Because if I can be a little bit critical of ourselves, we're still stuck in the ana. We're still stuck on the I. We're still stuck on what is going to get me far as opposed to what's going to get us far. And it comes back to one, our foundation, and two, if I may say so, our character. SubhanAllah. So think about the concept of integrity in activism as a foundation for you to be aligned with the vision vision of being an agent of change. You want to be like the disciples that were helping Isa alayhi salam. You don't need to be the main character for the young folks, right? You don't have to be the main character. In fact, the folks who have been impactful, you may not know their names, subhanAllah, in Islam, but each and every single played a role. Right now, you know the name of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi for the freedom and liberation of Masjid al-Aqsa. You do not know the soldier, the names of the soldiers that he was leading. You do not know the individuals who catered and were able to support them to make sure that they were good to go, or the folks who spent time teaching them their deen, or really investing in their growth. We don't think about the likes of Sumayya, right? The wife of Yasir, who subhanAllah was the first martyr of Islam. Because for us, we see that as being insignificant. We look at Ammar ibn Yasir. We look at, subhanAllah, Mus'ab ibn Umayr, who died in early death. A young youth who gave up the riches of Mecca, subhanAllah, who was sent to Medina, who looked like and resembled the Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Uhud, draw attention to himself away from our Nabi ﷺ. Each and every single one of us, sometimes we get so lost in the concept of positions, of power, of leadership, that we forget that Islam came to humble us. Islam came to transform us. And that we're supposed to be like the bees that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed us the way that they work in Surah Nahl. That you have a role for each person. You have the queen bee laying her eggs. You have the workers who are working through the hives and cleaning, right? And you have those who are going out and, subhanAllah, looking for pollen, right? You have those bees that are doing the bee dance. Each and every single bee has a role, but it's a society. And then what then of us as well? Which leads me to the second point that I want to emphasize. Integrity without humility. Humility and sincerity are the anchors of our efforts. That subhanAllah, that going back to that concept of you're easily replaceable, humility and sincerity is the anchor that really steadies us in the storms of activism. That you don't get that big ego head that is all about you. That whether it's online or offline, that when folks are, subhanAllah, we're running out of time. I talk too much, alhamdulillah. That humility is really about, it's not about diminishing your strength. It's recognizing where your strength is derived from. And it's derived from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is Allah who raises, it is Allah who lowers, not you. It's Allah who brings justice, not you. You're supposed to work for it. You're supposed to stay steadfast. You're supposed to put in the work and strive. Why? Because you're not going to be asked about what previous nations have done. You're going to be asked about what have you done. You're not responsible for the victory or the relief or anything of that aspect of it, subhanAllah. But humility is really about recognizing where do you drive your power from. تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that with the previous nations, you're not going to be asked about them. Their reward is with them, and our reward is with us, right? So you're not going to be asked about what they have done, but what have you done? Because when people see Muslims, do they see Islam? Or do they see these different aspects of folks that we have to give the disclaimer, please don't judge Islam by the Muslims, judge it by our books. When previously it used to be the Muslims showed you what Islam was, subhanAllah. And the last point I'm going to bring in is the concept of empathy. If integrity is your glue, if humility and sincerity is your anchor, then empathy is your heart. Give each other grace. Give each other grace because we're all learning, subhanAllah, and we're all growing. And one of the things that I'm not going to expand on this part is the concept of activism and holding each other accountable. We mistake it with respectability politics. There's a certain way to hold yourself accountable and not demean others and not be disagreeable, but at the same time still show the essence of what it means to be an activist. Being an activist does not mean that you withhold the truth because you're afraid of accountability, of holding others accountable if they are going away from the principles and foundations of Islam, right? Accountability and talking about empathy is when we act with empathy, we remind the world of what it means of being the ambassadors of the Prophet ﷺ, as he was sent as a rahmatan lil alameen. So navigating the discourse that we see online and offline, and I'll end with this, brothers and sisters, in the age of constant communication, right? And in our interaction, both online and offline, we must reflect the nobility of our faith and our character. We must be able to be individuals who speak truth to power, who hold each other accountable, but at the same time also making sure that when folks look to Muslims, What they see is faith in action. What they see is Islam in action, that we don't tolerate injustice even amongst ourselves, and even more so when it comes to those who use Islam for their own benefit or gain that hurts our community, subhanAllah. And this is more geared towards Zionism normalization in our community. And so thinking about uplifting the truth and holding others accountable, which I hope Imam Tom can kind of go over it quickly, speak with intention. Interact with each other with intention. Every word that we utter should serve a purpose, and a purpose that's aligned with our faith, a purpose that's aligned with pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we want to be amongst those individuals who Allah is pleased with. And of course, use wisdom and balance accountability, but avoid the pitfalls of your ego. Avoid the pitfalls of your ego. Too often, discourse becomes a battle of egos instead of a battle towards the truth. It becomes a battle between individuals and personalities, and I know, I can't even count the number of times this past year that I'm like, going between folks and it was like, it's not about you. That's all I wanted to shout out. It's about the work we're doing. It's about staying true to our principles. It's not about you, it's not about your organizations. It's about really manifesting that character that is aligned with what it means to be a Muslim, which is someone who enjoys that which is good, forbids that which is evil, and recognizes that you're going to be going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let your discourse with each other, both online and offline, be guided by your Islamic values and principles. And I'll end it right here, inshallah, so we can hear a little bit more from Imam Tom. But I want to end with this. Rise to a higher standard. Not because society demands it. Not because society expects it. Because Islam expects it. The same Islam that transformed the hearts of the Sahaba and changed them in such a way that they continue to conquer hearts and minds, subhanAllah, and conquer lands, is the same Islam that can transform you. But it was their character and their understanding of who they were employed by and who they were returning to that shaped the way that they carried themselves in this world, with that sense of izzah, that sense of pride, of knowing that La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is bigger, is stronger, is more powerful in the way we move, in the way we interact, in the way we show up for justice. That it's not about how many followers I have. It's not about me being a savior. It's not about my ego. It's about Islam. It's about truth and justice. It's about uplifting this community. It's about pushing ourselves to the next level and giving each other grace, because our personalities are different, our journeys are different, our stories are different, our challenges are different. Give each other grace, hold each other accountable when it comes to principles, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us as He has blessed previous nations. Jazakumullah khair.
As a reminder, feel free to drop your questions in the WOVA app in the chat function associated with this session. Our next speaker, inshallah, is Imam Tom Facchine. I was told it's Facchine like zucchini. Imam Tom Facchine converted to Islam in 2010. He finished his BA in Political Science from Vassar College in 2011 and was granted the opportunity to study at Islamic University of Medina from 2015 to 2020, where he obtained his BA from the Faculty of Sharia. Imam Tom is currently the Research Director of Islam and Society at the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research. He is also Resident Scholar of, how do I pronounce the name of the masjid? Okay, never, oh, well, Imam Tom Facchine, everybody.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وقدوتنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. First of all, y'all need to condense. We got people sitting on the floor, people walking in and looking like, whoa, where am I going to sit? So if you could try to condense as much as possible, especially we've got some brothers conscientious about sitting next to sisters, etc. Two sisters sitting next to you, there's a gap between you, close the gap as much as possible. Make space for people coming in still. Thank you. All right, this one. So these types of conversations honestly are better with heavy doses of Q&A, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible to get to people's questions. Actually, I wasn't planning on talking about accountability, but Ismahan's putting me on the spot. I feel like I talked about accountability too much the last 12 months. but it is important, so I'll try to weave that in as well. I basically have 3 points. 2 of them are cautionary tales, and 1 of them is sort of something to walk away with. So the first cautionary tale that I want all of us to consider and think about is the cautionary tale of the organization Black Lives Matter. So, this was an organization that for many of us turned us on to activism when we all remember the horrible police brutality that was now being live streamed, right? It sounds familiar. And it brought that consciousness to a lot of other people. And there was a movement, and the movement also came with an organization. And that organization was very, very popular. And as time went on, that organization was able to successfully leverage that popularity to raise millions and millions and millions of dollars of funds. And then at some point, that organization made a secret purchase of a $6 million mansion in California and used it to have parties. Now, it's really interesting, and I don't know enough about the details, so I could be completely wrong here, but from an outside perspective, this is one of the pitfalls of fame, and it's one of the pitfalls of success, and one of the pitfalls of not having certain principles that ground you. I'll put it in a positive light that taqwa is your ceiling. Taqwa is your ceiling for anything that you can do. And to come at it from the negative perspective, or from the opposite, is that shaitan will always give you a maslahah. The devil will always give you a reason why something is okay. We can think of a reason why this is justified, or X is justified, or Z is justified, but if we operate with that logic, then usually you're doing the lesser of 2 evils thing, and you get taken far, 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 far away. So we need to bring it back to more Islamic models of leadership. And that does touch on accountability, like Ismahan had mentioned. So if you were to look at the ways in which Abu Bakr and the ways in which Umar ta'ala anhuma were able to put themselves in positions of more authority than you or I will ever see, but yet keep themselves humble and at the service of people and accountable to the people beneath them and operating on principle. So with Abu Bakr, when he assumed the Khalifa, and he got in front of everybody and he said, I'm not the best one of you, which I'm sure everyone was rolling their eyes because they're like, yeah, right, we know you are. The Prophet ﷺ literally said you were the best of us, but okay. And then, he said, obey me as long as I obey Allah. And when I stop obeying Allah, that's where your obedience to me stops. And certainly, soon enough, they had the test of the Ridda Wars, or later we called the Ridda Wars, where there were groups of people that were claiming that zakat was not an essential part of the deen. And I'm sure for someone like Abu Bakr, it was probably very uncomfortable to confront that group of people. It certainly might have entailed a lot of human cost, a lot of resources. I'm sure there's lots of other things that he would have rather been doing. But he saw what Allah wanted in that particular scenario, which was the integrity of Islam, which is also a huge, huge thing that we need to keep in mind in activist spaces, the integrity of Islam. And realizing that certain actions create subsequent possibilities or close down possibilities for later actions. So what were to happen, or what would happen, if Abu Bakr had allowed somebody or some group to say that, okay, this pillar of Islam isn't really a pillar of Islam, or I want to opt out of it, or I don't really think that it's that important, that would have probably caused an enormous chain reaction. In fact, we know it would have because it happened with Christianity. If you guys are familiar with the circumcision controversy, Paul goes to Greece, he's like, hey, we don't have to do the circumcision anymore, and then it was a snowball effect from there. So this is even more emphasized with the Khilafah of Umar, who had a much longer time in power. So Umar was in power for 10.5 years, and he was even more dramatic with his speech in front of the people. He said to the people, he's like, what would you do if I leaned to the dunya? And he put his head like this to demonstrate leaning to the dunya. You know what the companions said to him? They said, if you lean to the dunya like that, we're going to take out our swords and we'll cut your neck like that. So it kind of makes me laugh. I mean, the last 14 months, we've been in WhatsApp groups with different organizations, some of them very evil organizations that are astroturf and don't want any good for our community, and other groups that do have grassroots in our community. But unfortunately, we do see an epidemic of, I would say, narcissistic traits in leadership in our Muslim community. And I think that we need to own that and try to figure out a way past that. That we see people who, when you challenge their strategy, when you challenge how closely they're adhering to their principles, the responses are, you guys are just keyboard warriors, we've been doing this longer than you don't know what's in our intentions, you're causing division and disunity. I mean, I don't know what Islam that person follows, but that's not the Islam that I accepted 14 years ago. That this is a type of leadership failure that we have in our community that we hope the younger generation here is going to transcend and surpass. Another cautionary tale, so I'll pivot to another example, another cautionary tale. So there was somebody who was actually a DNC delegate, and for a while they were doing some okay work. I don't want to name names, but they were part of the push to punish genocide, and they were trying to do what they could. But there was something that didn't sit right with me with this person, and I had personal knowledge of some of the inner workings of what was going on, and that was this. It was almost like an antagonism to the Muslim community. Like there would be comments about how the Muslims, like too much despair, like too much, the Muslims are this and the Muslims are that and the Muslims. And I was, really kind of like not okay. Like this is supposed to be part of our faith, that we do have a certain amount of loyalty and a certain amount of, goodwill that we have to have towards each other, and that our Islam actually demands that from us. And if we teeter too much into despair, and saying that, seriously, the comments were like, the non-Muslims I work with are better than the Muslims. Like, whoa, okay, that's a little intense. Sure enough, that individual couldn't last working with Muslim spaces or working with Muslim activism or dealing with Muslims. Eventually, they kind of sold out at the end. They endorsed Harris, at the beginning. And it was an L. So I only bring up that story to say that we have to understand that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Ma'idah, إِنَّمَا وَلِيُّكُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, that your allies, your protectors, your home team, your inner circle is Allah and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and the people of faith. This is your squad. Okay? Now what happens is we get tempted, because we're impatient sometimes, to run to this ally or to run to that ally, and we think that they are going to be able to do the heavy lifting for us. We have a sort of a framework of privilege and risk and these sorts of things that we consider that have elements of truth in them. But what it kind of gets us off the hook for is actually taking responsibility for doing the work. And that's one thing that I've come to believe in firmly in. Of course, I stand in the possibility of being wrong. But I don't care whether we're 1% of the population or 0.1% of the population or 0.01% of the population. I believe that the Muslims are going to liberate Palestine. And the source of that faith is because I believe my Lord. I believe what Allah promised. Because the next ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah, He said, فَإِنَّ حِزْبَ اللَّهِ هُمُ الْغَالِبُونَ, is that the people of Allah, the people who support Allah's deen, first of all, He's promised them nusr, He's promised them assistance, He's promised them victory. So all of this, whether you're going to stay true to your principles or whether you're going to sell out, or whether you're going to allow yourself to be tokenized in a certain space, it's really just the law separating and showing people's faces. And that's, 2024 was a year of masks falling all over the place. So really we have to take this, I think that we have to take this seriously. I've seen, and I know there's exceptions, so if you have an exceptional experience, then I'm happy for you, but from traveling the country in the last 14 months and seeing my experience on the ground is that most Muslim activists are not negotiating, or they're not negotiating in the space with their coalition partners properly, and they're not respecting themselves enough. That we allow other people to walk all over us. We allow other people to make us compromise on our values. And then we can't mobilize our base, and we kind of wonder why that happens. This is, back in the recesses of our brains, there's a faulty assumption about Allah here. That Allah is only going to deliver us victory through these other allies that don't reflect our values. And I just don't buy it. I think that if we organize our home team, our home base, and we shore up our capabilities within ourselves, I think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us victory, and Allah will figure out how. After, of course, we exhaust the means in trying to do our best to achieve that. And the last thing I'd like to say is just that being true to Allah. Everything comes down to just being true to Allah. Very similar to the last point, in the sense that we have to really trust Allah when He says that victory is His, and that death belongs to Him, and your rizq belongs to Him, that the whole attitude, I was talking yesterday on the main stage in the panel session about worrying what this law is going to do, or worrying like what that law is going to do, or now we have to be silent, now we have to, it's all in the hands of Allah. The reality is that nobody needs an excuse. Whether it's a fascist or just a normal person, an FBI agent or the government, they don't need an excuse. If they want to kill you, they're going to kill you. If they want to arrest you, they're going to arrest you. If they want to cancel you, they're going to cancel you. And there is no point of being likable enough where they won't do that to you. There's nothing you could do that would please them so much that they will not do that to you if they want to do that to you. So then what's the point, Ya Jama'ah? Are we going to live like humiliated, or are we going to stand on our feet like Muslims? Are we going to act like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's no way around it, there's no way over it, there's no way under it. It's through it. That we have to understand that how history works, whether it's the civil rights movement or any other movement in history, certain people have to die, certain people have to get arrested, and that's all part of how history works. Would I like to keep my life? Absolutely, of course. But what am I going to do if Allah has decreed otherwise? Seriously, there's absolutely nothing you're going to do to change it. So our opportunity is to demonstrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our sincerity for the cause and our willingness to pay the price. And that's the other thing. And my sheikh back in Medina, Sheikh Abdullahi used to say all the time, and sometimes those old sheikhs, they just like see through, you know what I mean? He used to say all the time, بَلْ مُشْكِلَتُنَا أَن نُرِيدَ الثَّمَنْ وَالْمَثْمُونَ وَهَذَا لَا يَكُونُ. We want our cake and we want to eat it too. We want to get the goods without paying the price. We want to stay comfortable in our luxuries and not have to pay anything, and also free Philistine on the weekends with a Starbucks latte in our hands. It's not going to happen. If you want a free Palestine, we're going to have to suffer. I got news for you. You're going to have to suffer. And so you have to prepare yourself for suffering and realize that Islam actually gives us meaning to that suffering. That suffering has purpose, and that suffering can be strategic, and that suffering is actually the price to freeing Philistine and beyond. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control. Nothing you do will change Allah's qadr. Nothing you do. You're literally either going to put yourself on the side of the good guys, or you're going to put yourself on the side of the bad guys. And it's your choice and it's my choice. And we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us the clarity and the sincerity and the courage to put ourselves on the side of the good guys. And Allah knows best.
Ameen.